Hi, everyone. This is Lawrence Watkins, and welcome to the Financial Juneteenth 5. These are my 5 favorite articles as it relates to Black finance, wealth, and business for today, October 26, 2020. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So, our lead story of the day comes from the Washington Monthly. So, that's the WashingtonMonthly.com. And it states reporters of color are declaring their independence. A new crop of outlets is making journalism more diverse. And it's by a woman by the name of Ann Kim. And the article talks about just the numbers over the last 50 years. So the article starts off with setting the scene of a typical newsroom back in 1968, the last time that we had extreme racial and civil unrest. So it says 1968 and 1967. The media report and right from this standpoint was from a white man's world. What was especially appalling, the article states, the commission found, they had the commission to talk about diversity in the newsroom, was the dearth of Black journalists in U.S. newsrooms across the country. Fewer than 5% of newsroom staff were Black, fewer than 1% were editors. The journalistic profession has been shockingly backward in seeking out hiring, training, and promoting of Negroes, the commission concluded. And now the writer Ann Kim, she just juxtaposes this to what we're seeing today. And here's the interesting stat. It states overall newsrooms are only about half as diverse as the U.S. workforce as a whole. So although gains have been made over the past 50 years, it's still not completely equitable in terms of what gets covered and by whom as well. And we see this over and over again in terms of just how Black news stories are covered. And writes here, champions of media diversity have stopped waiting for the establishment to fix itself. Instead, a new crop of reformers is staging its own insurgency, working outside of traditional media and often in spite of it. There's a quote here from Angela Ford, who is the founder of the Black media startup Obsidian, the Obsidian Collection. And she states, I don't know that we can integrate fairly at this point. It's time for the world to hear the Black voice from a Black filter. And this is interesting because that's one of the reasons why Financial Juneteenth exists. Of course, Boyce and myself have been in this space for many, many years before it was kind of cool to be the Black kid on the block or whatever. But I'm glad that more and more media outlets are starting to follow this path of independence instead of completely and always relying on white media outlets to tell our stories. But back to the article, the result is a small but already flourishing ecosystem of nonprofits, philanthropic efforts, and media startups led largely by people of color. The article mentions one of our current partners that we have something really special coming out, in the next, I guess, couple of months with Dr. Watkins' Push Black. But there's Push Black, Obsidian, and others that have been on the rise. The article states both of these outlets have the the financial backing of the Racial Equity in Journalism Fund, the RAJ Fund, an ambitious project recently launched by the Ford Foundation and other partners to grow and sustain an emerging sector of equitable media. So it's still not completely in the space that we're in terms of being fully Black and fully independent. But I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. Their goal is to challenge traditional media, to compete against it, and ultimately to transform an industry that has been far too reluctant to change. Talking about organizations like Push Black and others. And Kim then goes to talk a little bit more about just basic problems in the industry. So one of the basic problems is that we don't actually know the share of U.S. journalists in U.S. newsrooms across the country in terms of how many are people of color and more specifically Black. Something else they mentioned below as well as another problem in terms of the pipeline. Many young people of color also can't afford the luxury of an unpaid internship or the underpaid life of a freelancer, often prerequisites for scraping together enough bylines to land a full-time job. So we hear about this also in politics as well, given how little that the capital in the Washington establishment pays interns and like junior level staffers with with politics. The same seems to be true in the media as well. There's a quote in here from Manny Ramos. He's a Chicago Sun-Times reporter. If you're Black or brown and you grew up in a low income working class community, you're starting from behind compared to a middle class white person who can rely on generational wealth while they pursue their passion career. At one point, I had an internship at a local paper. I worked full time and I went to school full time, he told me. I had no life and I was barely sleeping. A lot of people can't do that. Yeah, so this, like I said, is a very interesting article, from the Washington Monthly. You can also look at individuals like on the left, you have someone like a Roland Martin, who left network media to start its own thing on YouTube and Facebook and other outlets, and has gained a really large audience. On the right, you can look at someone like Jason Whitlock, who is one of the co-founders of Outkick the Coverage in the sports arena as well. And I'm not getting into any of their political beliefs, but I do see that no matter who you are, currently, if you're Black, you're looking for a certain level of independence to say what you want to say. As I said before, that's something that we've been, preaching and been practicing since day one. But it's good to see other outlets, starting to catch up. And in many ways, hopefully, they'll continue to thrive far beyond, in terms of their audience, even beyond, what we do with Financial Juneteenth and also our different networks as well. But shout out to everyone. Shout out to Ann Kim for actually writing this story. The next article comes from, this is interesting. This came from Fortune magazine. And it states, former Facebook employees' new book exposes big tech's dirty secrets. And actually, this is related to the first article that I just went across, and also the next article as well, in regards to just media, being Black in media and journalism. So the novel is written by a man by the name of, I missed this name. Yeah, I can't find the brother's name. Oh, Mark Lucky. So he left Facebook in 2018. He worked at Facebook, Twitter, and maybe like a couple other tech companies. But I believe he did like PR and also worked on partnerships. But he wrote a novel, and it states, the novel Valley Girls tells the story through the lens of four main characters working in the communications department of tech firm Element, which Lucky said has elements of companies like Google, Uber, and Facebook. The story starts with optimism and gets progressively worse as the characters, all women, are put in increasingly compromising positions at work. Lucky said he wrote the book as fiction, partly to protect his sources, many of whom has signed non-disclosure agreements with their employers. He has a quote in here, and Lucky states, "This is very much a part of tech people don't see or hear about. When scandals arrive, they think of CEOs and executives. They rarely think about the people crafting the message around it." Lucky, who has worked for companies including Facebook, Reddit, and Twitter in various roles that aid with influencer and media partnerships. During his time at the tech companies, he said he watched young, ambitious professionals, many of whom were women, join the communication teams, only to face situations in which they might have to hide company information or negotiate their way out of it, even if they ultimately disagreed with the company. So the article goes on to give a quick interview with Mark Lucky, but at the end of the article, he was asked a question, "What do you hope this book does for people who read it?" And Lucky answered, "This is about sharing the torch of knowledge, putting it into the hands of people, and letting them do what they want, whether it's to stay on the platform or not. For government and civil organizations, it's a guide to help them hold tech companies accountable. It's a guide for reporters and journalists to better understand the inner workings of the companies as well. So check this article out from Fortune Magazine. It will be in the link will be in the description of this YouTube video as well. The next article comes from the Daily Beast, and it is entitled, I Experienced Systemic Racism at One of America's Most Prestigious Magazines. And the magazine that they're talking about is Town and Country. The writer of the article is a woman by the name of Verneda Adele White. And she talks about her experience being a contractor at the magazine, handling live events in terms of scheduling guests and creating different types of panels, that type of thing. So the advancing conversations featured at the Affluent Heritage Brands annual event, Town and Country Philanthropy Summit, for example, have tackled issues from mass incarceration to police violence and have featured a who's who of Black powerhouses from Valerie Jarrett, Darren Walker, John Legend, and Ava DuVernay, to Michael B. Jordan, Robert Smith, and in the Exonerated Five and others. Behind the scenes, however, the company's offices and hiring practices, a very different story emerges, one that has all the hallmarks and deep-seated systemic racism and bias. So later on, she was just talking about what she saw during, after she was hired as a contractor. During this period, each time I became aware of newly filled positions at Town and Country, whether full-time or contractors, I observed the magazine had consistently hired a white candidate, frequently, but not exclusively, female and blonde, with few exceptions. When the magazine's publisher, Jennifer Levine Bruno, was in need of a new executive assistant, a blonde white woman was hired. A new senior marketing coordinator, a blonde white woman. A new brand marketing director, blonde white woman, and so on. And she tells the story. I'm not going to go deep into it, but basically she was up for a position that she was recommended by the person who was actually leaving the company. She applied. She was, trying to be proactive in terms of the hiring process. But in the end, of course, they went in another direction. They were very vague with their emails, but basically she didn't fit, what they were actually looking for. Who's to say if it's because she was, or a Black woman or whatever it may be. But there is a likelihood that was the case, or that she just didn't fit into the blonde white woman stereotype. And this gets to the crux of our argument in the entire article. She states, let's take a pause. The incident described here is not only about me being passed over without consideration and not getting the business. Instead, what it illustrates is something that many heritage media brands like Town and Country are now forced to reckon with. Systemic recruitment and procurement practices that routinely exclude or ignore qualified Black applicants while effectively prioritizing the maintenance of a homogenous, white-centric organizational culture. Too often, Black/African-American candidates or suppliers are denied the opportunity to apply or to even submit a proposal for jobs. So yeah, I think this article, and I understand where this sister is coming from, but it shows the importance of vertical integration. But I know that takes a lot of time and capital to actually make happen. But the need for these Black-owned media platforms that we talked about that are declaring their independence from the Washington Monthly article, and the creation of our own ecosystems that hire, very qualified individuals like this woman, Verneda Adele White as well. So these three articles have, like I said, the same theme in talking about just media and tech, and also corporate interests, and how they all combine and coalesce into a system that, like we always say, wasn't really built for us as Black people, but we have the experience to either change from the inside or completely build our own system as well. The next article comes from Forbes magazine, and it states Black women were among the fastest growing entrepreneurs. Then COVID arrived, and it's from Ruth Uma, and she writes about diversity and inclusion. But basically, the article started off by talking about one business was thriving as a Black woman, but of course, then COVID hit, and then her business went almost to zero. As the coronavirus threat escalated in early March, their sales declined, nearly hitting zero by April. That same month, Winter laid off almost every member of her 5-person team, save for one contract worker. Right now, we're treading water and have applied for 10 different grants with no success. It's a little daunting, but we're trying to carry the company on our backs. And I believe she was I think it was a spa. I'm not exactly sure. I have to go back and check. Maybe that was the next business that was a spa. But no matter what the business is, many Black women are facing similar circumstances as well. For years, Black women have created new businesses at a rapid clip, far outpacing other racial and ethnic groups. But strong financial headwinds from the pandemic and a lack of access to new funding sources threaten to wipe out decades of economic progress, leaving Black female business owners in a state of perpetual uncertainty, waiting for relief that they fear will never come. And here's an interesting stat. Black women represent 42% of new women-owned businesses, 3 times their share of the female population, and 36% of all Black-owned employer businesses. But yeah, I think we should. Oh, Sundari Miller was a little later on in the article, but the article goes on to talk a lot more about just managing COVID and the lack of funding, and even the lack of getting PPP loans, so Paycheck Protection Program loans, and also EIDL or EIDL loans, the economic injury disaster loans that many Black companies were struggling to get as well. But check this article out from Forbes. I found it to be very interesting, and I think you'll get a lot of good information out of it. The last article that I want to cover today is from The Atlantic, and it states higher education should lead the efforts to reverse structural racism. Colleges and universities have a special role to play in making sure America's prosperity is accessible to all. And this article was written by Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, Peter Henderson, and Kathleen Tracy. I believe all of them are at the UMBC or have some type of affiliation with it, which is the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And I want to say it's either an HBCU or has a very, very large Black population. So someone in the comments can tell me if I'm right about that. But Dr. Hrabowski and others stated, we in this field have an obligation to engage in this work because we have become more central than ever to our students' American dreams. We hold out to our students the promises of an enriched life and social mobility, and yet we often fall short in providing these to all who arrive on our campuses. There was some interesting quotes in here in terms of 6-year graduation rates. Our institution, the University of Maryland at Baltimore County, has made enormous progress on the crisis in student success. In the 1980s, UMBC had a 6-year graduation rate for all freshmen of just more than 30%. And for Black freshmen, the rate was 10 percentage points lower. So you're talking about in the 80s, 30% of people graduated, and for Black people, that was 20%. But through a range of interventions, we have increased our 6-year graduation rate to 70% overall, not including the 10% who transfer and graduate elsewhere. Moreover, we have no Black-white graduation gap. So Black students and white students are performing at the same rate at the UMBC campus. Over the next decade, OUE implemented, so this part of the article was talking about a few different things that they are implementing or they have implemented to help close that gap and to increase graduation rates. So this is the Office of Undergraduate Education. And what they did was implemented new programming for first-year students to increase retention, including a summer bridge program, a new student book experience, short courses on how to navigate college, writing instruction, first-year seminars, and other things as well. One of the other things that they talked about that they needed to do and that they did successfully beginning in 2003 was becoming more data warehouse and data centric and pulling together all information so they can get a complete picture of what a student's experience looked like. And the last thing that they talked about is that in the past decade, faculty have also focused on course redesign to improve teaching and learning. Redesigned introductory courses that emphasize active, problem-focused, and group-based work support student learning and success in classes that have traditionally been taught across the country as weed-out courses. So yeah, he gives a lot of very tangible things that they actually did and talks about just the problem in general. And Freeman, Dr. Herbowski is one of the leaders in the education space. And if you're looking to see what higher education needs to do to serve Black students, then I highly recommend this article from The Atlantic as well. So that's about it. There's well, those are my top 5 articles, or favorite articles as it relates to Black finance, wealth, and business for today. Please go ahead and give us a thumbs up, and please shoot us a message and tell me what you think about the articles and the Financial Juneteenth segment in general. But before you get out of here, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And on behalf of Financial Juneteenth, my name is Lawrence Watkins. Take care, be blessed, and talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Today's video is brought to you by the Black Business School. At the Black Business School, we don't help you just climb the corporate ladder, we help you build your own as well. We provide a culturally relevant yet practical education in all things wealth building at an affordable price. So no matter if you want additional freedom in your day-to-day life, you would like to leave a legacy of generational wealth behind to your family and friends, or you just want additional security and stability going into your golden years of retirement, the Black Business School has courses and offerings for you. So head over to theblackbusinessschool.com to learn more. Take care and see you in class soon. Bye-bye.